It's now my pleasure to introduce our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Timothy J. Conway.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Brewster High School in the Brewster Central School District. And thank you all for taking time out of your busy day to join us for this opening ceremony of the 9/11 Never Forget exhibit. This interactive exhibit, which is behind me, operated by the Stephen Siller Tunnels to Tower Foundation, honors those who sacrificed so much on September 11, 2001. And it is also a very valuable educational experience for our youth, some of whom are either too young to remember 9/11 or simply weren't born yet. This exhibit is intended to convey a sense of the bravery and sacrifice of many on September 11. Actually, a day that began not too differently from this one, a day with no clouds, blue skies, and just a touch of autumn in the air. A day that we can all remember where we were as the events of that day unfolded. This exhibit, proudly escorted to the Brewster High School earlier today by a motorcade of motorcycles and emergency vehicles, is an impactful way for our school children and members of this community to learn about and recall the sacrifice shown by many that day. The Stephen Siller Foundation, sponsor of this 9/11 exhibit, is named after New York City fireman Stephen Siller, who on his day off, September 11, 2001, and upon hearing of the horrific events unfolding, grabbed his 60 pounds of fireman's gear and ran a mile and a half to the World Trade Center to be in service to others, and where he, along with many others, perished, never to see another sunrise. Before we move forward with this ceremony and open the exhibit, I would like to recognize several invited guests who have joined us to also honor those who sacrificed on 9/11. And so if you could, please let us know if you're here, maybe raise your hand when your name is called, and if I miss anyone, I do apologize. Putnam County Deputy County Executive Bruce Walker. Putnam County Legislatures Roger Gross, Joe Castellano, and Ginny Nazarino. Town of Southeast Town Clerk Michelle Stancati, representing Supervisor Tony Hay. Town of Southeast Councilman Robert Cullen and Edwin Alvarez. Ed Brancotti, District Director for Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney. Chief Investigator Gerald Shremick, representing Sheriff Donald Smith. State Assemblyman Stephen Katz. Putnam County Director of Veterans Affairs Carl Rohde. And I would also like to mention two families who are here today, represented here today, who were personally affected by the events of 9/11. The Blackwells in the Harlans. We'd like to welcome Jane Blackwell and Debbie Harlan. Thank you for joining us today. Also, this opportunity was made possible with the help of many, and so thanks are certainly in order. The Stephen Driscoll chapter of Fraternal Order of Police, the New York City Firefighters, Hudson Valley East, the Cruise News Minutemen Riders, the Putnam County Sheriff's Department, the Brewster Fire Department, the Putnam County Bureau of Emergency Services, the Commissioner of Emergency Services, Adam Stiebling, Deputy Emergency Services Coordinator Kenny Clare, the New York State Police, the Carmel, Lake Carmel, Patterson, Putnam Lake, and Mahopac Fire Departments, the Ethan Allen Inn in Danbury for providing overnight accommodations at no charge for those working in this exhibit this week, Eric Gross for his help in getting out the word to the community, Principal Joe Castagnola, who worked so hard to make sure that every detail of this week-long exhibit was addressed with care, John Hodge and Lisa Reese from the Stephen Siller Tunnel to Towers Foundation for their hard work in bringing this exhibit to us, to the members of the planning committee and the community groups who worked for months to carefully plan every detail of this event. Thank you. To the Brewster Education Foundation for their financial support of this week-long event. Without the Brewster Ed Foundation, all of this would not be possible today. And last but not least, thank you to the Brewster Education Board of Education for their unwavering support of this event. And with this, I would like to introduce the President of the Brewster Board of Education, Dr. Stephen Jambor, who will welcome you and share some thoughts with us on this special occasion. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, students, members of our Brewster family. Thank you for joining us in welcoming the 9/11 Tribute Center. It is indeed a privilege to have the honor of being the first school district in the entire country to host this memorial. In preparing my remarks tonight, I've spoken to various people these past 2 weeks to try and understand what 9/11 still means to them today, 13 years later. While the intensity of the emotions have understandably settled down a bit, there is still a lot that moves us about this day. You can hear the sadness, the loss, the pain, the frustration, and yes, even the anger. This is how we all, as a people, react to such a terrible, tragic event. If you listen carefully and watch their faces, you will also see and hear another sentiment that runs down deeper than all the rest. You may recognize it with a knowing nod of the head that signals without words what we all have in common, and that is our resolve. When it comes down to that one core feeling, we are one people, just as we were then in the days after, when the skies were empty and there were no baseball games. While we may not be flying our flags as much or tooting our horns to each other on the highway, we still carry this singular resolve to never forget. It is a good thing that the memorial will be here in a school district for this week. It is in keeping with our mission to be the cornerstone of a free, democratic society. Thomas Jefferson began the public school system to serve as a gateway into a country where there would be opportunities for all. As such, our job begins with the 3 R's and goes well beyond. Our job is to help children learn about our culture, our values, and our vision. Although it is an old-fashioned word, I would also say that our role is to teach patriotism. Given that mission, I would ask, what better way is there to help kids appreciate patriotism than for us to share with them this sense of resolve that we have about 9/11. It is, after all, a vital part of who we are to never forget. Americans are a strong and proud people. We are also a peace-loving people. It violates us terribly when someone crosses that line. You know, FDR said December 7th, 1941 was a day that will live in infamy. The same could also be said for 9/11. More importantly, though, we should say and teach our children that that is a day that will live forever in our hearts. Thank you. I would like now to introduce Mr. John Hodge, Director of Operations for the Stephen Siller Tunnel to Towers Foundation, so that he may say a few words. Thank you again.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Now let's try that again. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. This isn't a somber occasion. A little over 13 years ago, we had a somber occasion. This isn't one of them. Let me tell you something. Brewster rocks. You guys proved that to me today. Brewster really rocks. Let me tell you why Brewster rocks. Brewster rocks because Dr. Conway, Dr. Conway and Dr. Castagnola both had the vision and foresight to bring this in. This is the first. We've been in a lot of schools throughout the nation so far. We've had a tremendous number of stops. We christened this just about a little over a year ago on September 11th in North Carolina. Been to a lot of schools, but no one's had the vision that they've had, which is let's bring all of our children and let's let them find out about September 11th. Let me tell you why September 11th is so important. For all the youngsters who are here, if you were in fact even born at that point, or maybe just a few years old, the rest of what happens in your life will be affected by the events of September 11th. So you should know what the origin was, how things started, and why we're at where we're at. A month ago, we hardly heard of ISIS. Now we hear about ISIS all the time. Before that, it was Al-Qaeda. There'll be something after that again. It's so important to know what happened on the day this nation was attacked. And quite frankly, one of the reasons I think it's so important that the children come in and see this and understand is not only because if we don't remember and if we do forget what happened on September 11th, then we're destined to have those events repeat themselves. History will tell us that over and over again. So it's important that you know what exactly happened on that day. But it's also important that you know that on that day, which is probably our darkest hour, it was also, in my opinion, the finest hour in the United States of America, because we had something uniquely American happen that day, folks. You had first responders and everyday citizens, first responders in particular, charging into that building, running in as others were running out. It was the largest mass evacuation in the history of the world. According to former Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who was there that day, the first responders assisted in getting over 25,000 people out of those buildings before they collapsed. They paid a very, very dear price for it, though. Just the firemen alone lost 343 of their members, plus police department and other first responders. But that's what made it uniquely American. Where else, think about what's going on around this world, where else do you hear of everyday people and civil servants running in at a moment's notice and willing to risk their lives to save others? I don't hear it going on around the world. God knows there's a lot going on around this world. That's what happened here on September 11th. I think it's important because so frequently we all hear this, we talk about sports figures as heroes. They're heroes for the day, for that moment. They hit the ball over the fence or they scored that winning touchdown. Sure, they're heroes, but they're not heroes like these men and women were that day. Those are true American heroes. So I want to thank you all so very much for coming here today. I want to say God bless Brewster for bringing this in, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John, for sharing those thoughts with us. You can tell John speaks from the heart. We appreciate all the work he's done to bring this exhibit here. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our program for today. Thank you, and the exhibit is now open, and we invite all in attendance to tour the exhibit. However, we would like to honor our first responders who are out in the audience and our special families who were affected by 9/11 to be among the first to come through the exhibit today. So if you would please come on up, and thank you all for attending and have a great evening. Thank you.
Dr. Conley. Don't you hate it when someone reads your final ending line like that? It was so well choreographed, too. My apologies. Sir, it's just a small token of a thank you and appreciation for having the vision to bring us here today. This means a lot to us. This is a Tunnel to Towers FDNY hat. It's in honor of my cousin, Stephen Siller, who was one of the 343 who were killed that day. We'd like to present it to you as a memento and a token of our appreciation for being here today. Thank you so much, sir.